welcome. So we are here at ZohoDay 2026. It's been a great week of content with the Zoho execs and the product team. I'm here today with Tejas Gadhia. How you doing, man?
I really feel full of energy.
Full of energy? Yeah. He wants to go home, guys. It's been an awesome week, man. It's been exhausting, but good. It's been fun. So Tejas, a lot of talk this week about AI, privacy, security. Give us a little bit about your background, who you are, what you do for Zoho.
So I do a little bit of everything for Zoho, just like pretty much everyone at the company. And I kind of focus on a lot of the developer and AI stuff, which is kind of just been the hype. So it's kind of business is booming, I guess, in that regard. Maybe overwhelming. I think the market is just wild. It's hard to keep up with what's going on every single day. This morning I was in bed doom scrolling, and I think like Google had a couple new models that come out, some cool like video thing and design stuff and image generation that got better. And like things are just moving so quick that like people who are in it all day long, even you feel behind. But like from customers' perspective, like they expect us to kind of like be that guiding force for them.
Right.
And I think one thing that's kind of hard for I think a lot of people, especially like maybe the less technical people, is they kind of like feel, I wouldn't say left behind, but a little bit fear of missing out. But like there's just so much hype, and you also don't know what's real and what's not. Like
exactly.
I think everybody should kind of know that what you see on social media is not always real. But like when you see something, it's like, oh, I just made this in 2 seconds with like one phone. It's like, no, you probably didn't. You probably did a lot of stuff in the background and like spent 3 hours working on that thing, and finally there's shadiness there. But like when you see that, it's like, oh, I want that too. So I think we have like those excited kind of customers that sometimes I wouldn't say pump the brakes, but it's kind of like a lot of times the more ambitious the scope of a project is, obviously the likelihood of it succeeding is kind of lower. So we try to tell people like, let's just get small, boring, quality of life improvements in. And those are kind of compound more than you know it. You think you can like automate an entire department, hold the brakes.
Right.
Get you, the pieces that are involved, because it's the pieces that put together that'll get you the full automation. But if you try to just jump at the automation level, you're not going to be able to really dig down at every little piece. And so I think a lot of it has kind of become, I wouldn't say consulting, but just a lot of it's kind of separating hype from reality and kind of just giving people the real practicality. Because I think everywhere you read, whether it's news, social media, articles, even other vendors, it's like the world is changing and everything's going to be automated in agents, and it's kind of like, all right, let's just make sure that there's a human connection to everything, and we're providing quality things at a reasonable price and a high value, and making your life better, hopefully. So
no, absolutely.
Long answer to a short question, but it's just a crazy time.
It is crazy. I mean, I'm as analyst, right? I find myself, I'm, all the new models coming out. We had our deep seat moment. We had all this stuff coming out. All these new models, image to video now, whatever. It's like there is that fear of missing out, right? And I found myself reading research papers on this stuff for like Friday night. I'm normal good. I'm normal fun. I'm normal good on a Friday night. I'm like, what am I reading a research paper for? Like, but as an analyst, I got to keep up, right? Yeah. So you have to sort of distill all that stuff for customers and like saying level set, like practical AI. Like no, this is what the real is.
And like just a lot of it is also like the most value comes from like stringing together the right things that. If you just like use one thing, whether it's a feature that the vendor provides, that we provide, or another vendor, or even just a single model or a single like tool like just ChatGPT, you realize that like you're kind of boxed in, and the real value comes from like maybe ChatGPT model is really good for X, and Gemini model is really good for Y, and Anthropic model is really good for Z, and maybe this other thing that's like a small model is really good for some niche use case. And so like the mixing and matching is where I think the value and the separation between like don't want to say like normies and like power users, that really is where that separation starts going further. I think they talk a lot about like prompt engineering being a big thing. And I've kind of seen like I watched my parents use Google, and like you start out, even when I started out Google, you type in the whole sentence, and then you get better and you go keywords, like
exactly
best restaurants Austin. I'm not saying what are the best restaurants in Austin ? Like you don't need to do all that, but you figure that out over time. And same way with prompting, you'll figure out that like how you word things become very important to the output.
Absolutely.
And even at work and from friends, I'll see them type things in there, and it's if you don't set the context, the answer is generic, and generic isn't going to be the same as everybody. And the whole point of this tool is to give you something that's very unique to you. And so if you don't provide really good context, you're getting just kind of the generic answer everybody gets. So if you say like, tell me about Zoho to ChatGPT, you get like the generic answer.
Exactly.
But you got to say, tell me about Zoho and how it might apply to my X business located here with this many employees and this kind of business and these problems. Then you get something that's actually actionable and interesting to you. And so we're getting there, but a lot of it's just kind of stringing along those right tools. Maybe one tool is good for prompting and one good tool is good for execution of that prompt, right? It just depends on the situation. So not being boxed into one and being like, open, but also
Yeah.
having your own models makes it, a little bit best of everything.
Yeah, and using tools for what using tools for what is good for. Yeah, to that point, yeah, and back to your point earlier, like about business outcomes. How do you again level set again people who have that like sort of consumer use of the larger LLMs, right? Where they summarize this or what's a good recipe for for salmon, right? Like that use versus like how do you get to business outcomes and how do you sort of level set that?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to maybe the ambitious scope. People just want to boil the ocean a lot, so that becomes kind of tough to like level set them down. But it's really, I think, the hype from a lot of the market, maybe even from other vendors, is around like automating away people around like maybe support roles, maybe operational roles, maybe like even HR and legal and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think we generally take a pretty different approach where it should be way more, I guess, people empowering rather than like people replacing. And so I don't think we really like can you probably replace a few people with the stuff that we make? Yeah, sure, but like that's not our encouragement of things. It's more how can you do more and free up your mind from the menial tasks for the automated stuff and free your mind for creative, real output. At the end of the day, you can't really get rid of the people because you need the people to create the ideas in order to have the models create stuff. So like that creativity becomes even more important as the skill rather than the building skill. And so I've kind of seen even like the non-technical people who are creative become almost more valuable than the people who can build but are not creative.
Like,
some people can just take the idea like, all right, I can execute it. I'll build it and make sure that you don't go crazy. But now the creative person can run, and so it's a different world of like the pie of builders and like I think like idea people just kind of grew a lot, and like it'll only get bigger and bigger. People just feel empowered. They can now do things that they didn't. They thought were like not capable of. Like you can like run when you thought you could only walk. Like, oh my god, this is crazy. We're gonna keep going.
No, exactly, and two with that too. It's funny. So my brother's like a graphic designer. He works for Pandora, I'll say, and so now with these new design tools, whether it's in Figma, whatever it is, right? You have a lot of not low level graphic designers, or people that are lay workers, who are not just designing stuff. And there's a lot to be accounted for taste, right? Like just because you can doesn't mean you should. Because he's like, yeah, that's the brand colors, but that looks ugly.
Taste is absolutely the number one thing. For any kind of software, has like new features, new functionalities, kind of become easier to build and automate. You can just say, hey, add this new feature for like whatever field or module or whatever workflow you want to create. That building aspect is easy, but the taste of what is necessary. Am I over-engineering this? Do I have too much going on?
Exactly.
On the design side of things, I think like the general AI slop, both from like a text perspective and a design perspective, you kind of look at something and that like, it doesn't feel that way. The only way you can feel that way is from like having taste, and the taste comes from like you really like putting the hard work in.
Yeah, exactly.
So I feel like people think that they're threatened, but it's not that way. It's actually like taking the menial task away and going back to the empowering stuff of what probably brought you the passion to do what you did in the first place.
Yeah, and I was with Zoho, and I like you guys are sort of giving people the opportunity to work with multiple models, giving them the control of their own context. And so to that argument, how then do you sort of help promote or help, I guess, you give them the control, but then with that control comes the risk. So how do you sort of help them mitigate that sort of the risk and the governance of all that?
Yeah, the governance piece is that's a wild, wild west right now. I don't think anybody really, not everybody, but a lot of people don't seem to care about governance. People will connect to whatever, all sorts of things, like the whole open cloud thing of like accessing everything on your computer, or even like connecting your whole Slacks or whatever, like for your full
Cloud
lifetime email. It's like crazy things. So right now it seems fun, but more serious and regulated organizations will definitely have concerns that they got to obviously mitigate. And their problem really that's kind of happened is, as an organization has like I would say like a diversified tech stack or like a multiple vendors in your system. Yeah. Every vendor is a point of risk for every company, right? So having something that's consolidated in a universal governance layer across all of them becomes I don't want to say priceless, but definitely super valuable, because then to build that cross governance, either you're probably going to buy another vendor that does governance as a middle layer, so you have another vendor kind of squeezing you somewhere, or the primary vendor, like maybe an us or a competitor or whatever, can offer it themselves, but they can only offer it for their own ecosystem. So if you only make apps in one domain, then you can't offer a full governance for everything you do. And governance kind of collects a lot of things. I think they're all kind of interconnected. So one could be just general, let's say like data privacy. Yeah. When information is used, is my customer data used for training your model or not? Is that very clear to me or not? When I want to summarize like a record in my CRM, is that customer's email, name, phone number actually sent to the LLM and like exposed, or is that actually stored, or does the vendor like offer some kind of like masking in the middle and like privacy aspect, and then sends it out to third-party model and then comes back? And what's the trade-offs? So like there's the privacy angle there. Then there's also like the more risk angle, maybe back to the open cloud thing, is kind of like you can't just give them free will to run around. You got to like really scope it down.
Some guardrails or something.
And you can't scope it in the legacy way of like user management scoping. In the old world, when you license a user, you have like certain permissions that somebody can click and do things. Now this agent can do a lot more differently. So you got to really scope it down and keep it tight so it doesn't go crazy and do things it's not supposed to do. Like maybe you have like a read agent, read-only agent, then like a governance check that makes sure that read-only, came up with a good plan, and then actually go execute if that plan is approved, or you have to build all those things in and really think in a very critical way of how bad can this really go. And then the last thing I'll talk about on this is kind of like, we don't really have the problem today, but there will absolutely be like a big pricing concern in the future. Right now, things are kind of just cheap and free. I'd say like, Uber's back in like 10 years ago, it was cheaper than a cab. Now it's a little bit more. Grocery delivery, Airbnbs or whatever it is. Like, a lot of things we've kind of seen around us that increase the price because once the network effect is made, now you have pricing control and market pressures that will make you increase the price.
Exactly.
And so what we really want to do is, one, offer options to everybody. Obviously, we don't want people to force people to use our stuff. But eventually when like the models start becoming more expensive, then now you got to think about optimization a lot. You got to think about, am I using the right model for the right job all the time? Can I offload some work to a local model or a smaller model and use the big model for something different? And like that whole logic hasn't even been thought about yet. Right now we're just throwing the biggest model at everything to even like, tell me a joke. That's like, you don't understand how much like energy we just burned by just like, saying, tell me a joke.
Tokens,
and nobody cares, right?
Yeah.
But eventually people will start caring when the bill becomes a little bit more real. So it's all kind of tied into like security, governance, risk, privacy. And the real ultimate advantage is kind of like the more tools in this ecosystem that people use, those like risk benefits are just compounded every single time. And so it kind of, people will start finding like, where can I go one place to solve all my problems?
Right.
Rather than having to manage everything myself.
Yes, that's a wild, wild west. Because what you're saying then, so with the multiple models, you have data, trapped in all these different applications and workflows. And now the data's moving because now you're trying to like get constantly workflows. Is there a role that's going to emerge or a team that's going to manage the sort of context layer?
There will be. There'll be companies that come up that offer, context as a service, basically. Just like the LLM providers will increase prices of their, model usage. A lot of vendors will have to increase the price of API usage because that's kind of like not really talked about that much. Of like every call is like, give me a list of all my leads in my CRM. That's a lot of leads in the CRM that maybe you don't need to pull every single one every single time. And if everyone is an API call or you're batched or whatever, a vendor's gonna have to find a way to make money, and they're gonna increase the prices of APIs too. So a part of the unified system is there's no API calls, everything's inside in a unified database. So that makes kind of a big factor where from a performance angle and a speed angle, it helps. Helping building context across multiple products helps. And not having to pay for the extra API calls helps a lot too. So that industry will exist, and I think it'll be a big industry because that ultimately the patchwork and cleaning up is always that's never gonna go away. But I think hopefully a lot of people will end up seeing the light because it'll just be a big headache to try to manage all that stuff manually because it's just it's a game of whack-a-mole. You're never gonna. The ideas and the pace of the stuff being able to outsmart you in like you're trying to control it can be very difficult. So having like a narrow scope for each action and not just being go fix my company, solve my business problem. That's not going to be a reasonable way to use it. So
it's all about it's a wild, wild west. And so if you were advising, and I think you actually said some of it a little while ago, if you're advising companies, who are looking, at a vendor, to invest in, you start talking about the privacy stuff. Like, what are the key questions then that they need to ask?
Yeah, I kind of start with like, okay, so if we go back to what a vendor offers is like, features and functionality. We've kind of established that becomes like almost table stakes. Everybody can build a feature almost autonomously, and it'll only get faster and easier later on the line. So then what are you kind of paying for? You're kind of paying for offshoring risk to some extent. Otherwise, we would just use some vibe-coded thing and like use it that way, right? So you do need someone you can offload that risk to. And then the second piece, which is kind of connected to risk, but I like to separate it, is around trust. And trust is just like a thing that is very obviously hard to define because everyone's is different, but it takes forever to build up and takes a few things to kind of mess it up, obviously. And what we'll kind of see is like how vendors of any kind choose to treat their customers becomes almost like the X factor. Is there a long-term partnership here? Are they trying to nickel and dime me for everything? Are they in the game of innovation and constantly delivering more value for less value? And the long track record helps a lot too. That's why I like the vibe coding angle of like, the death to SaaS and all that kind of stuff. And it works for some people. I think it's going to be amazing for like micro businesses because you'll have like, a very small, super niche, very personal to you. It's great for them. And actually, it's like amazing that they are not boxed out of the software world that usually was like not unattainable, but just like unapproachable for those kinds of people.
Yeah.
So now like you could vibe code like a candy store in Austin. Like, you know, super niche. As long as I can get 50 customers and each one of them pay me $50, I'm pretty good. You know, that's not terrible. Right? So you know, the market size goes a lot smaller. So the vibe code angle is there, but if you're like any kind of like medium or bigger company who needs to manage that risk, can you trust a vibe coder? Is that guy going to be around for a long time? Is that girl going to be increasing prices? Are they going to be keeping on adding features? Or are they going to move on to the new app? Right, you know, that vendor trust of like a history of innovation and a history of, you know, good business practices and just like doing the right thing.
Yeah.
That's a priceless thing that you can't really, you know, put a price on. I mean, you pay for the software, so you put a price somewhere. But there's a peace of mind that comes with it of just like, am I doing business with a good, you know, a good partner, not just a vendor that's selling me stuff and taking advantage of me or like trying to find ways to make more money. Which I think people will start finding out as you feel a little bit more threatened. You're gonna have to find ways to make a little bit more money. So like the economic side will start making a big difference. But long story short, trust is
the key.
Unquantifiable, but like you can't write down. It's not a marketing page. It's a feeling. It's an experience, and it's proof in like time. And that's just the only way you can really get it.
Yes, it is. That the ethics angle is interesting. Yeah, it's funny because I grew up. My dad's a jazz musician, so we grew up. You know, he used to take me to rehearsals in New York City. Probably place that shouldn't have been at 7 years old. But that's another story.
Different interview.
Different interview. But you know, now there's these new music apps, right? You know, that you can put in like a melody, you know, hum a melody, whatever. I think one's called like Soon or something like that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and you can like hum a melody, whatever. It'll develop like a 12-track song, right, with the drums, bass, keyboards, you know, like strings, everything separated. And that's a song from like your little melody. Now, it's obviously to me a derivative work because what's that derived from, right? It's obviously trained on, you know, and so you get to the ethics thing like, so if I release this, is that, you know, who's a part of that song, you know, that's not getting credit for it, right? You know, it's just like
it's definitely tricky. I mean, there's definitely I'm pretty sure there's a AI artist on Spotify, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, just kind of, I mean, I like Spotify, I'm a user, customer, whatever. But like, if I was Spotify, and you know, if I had the option of giving a customer Dave's song that I got to pay royalties to, or I have the option of giving Dave an AI song that I don't have to pay royalties to, what am I going to pump in your feed? I'm going to pump in the free thing. So like, it'll be kind of difficult or like almost detrimental to the actual creators that built up the entire thing. And so yeah, those are like very macro level ethical concerns of like you could take the same thing of like a developer that made a cool app and put it on GitHub or something, and now everybody can just kind of, you know, reverse engineer and rip it. Then, you know, where's the IP kind of angle? So I think the IP won't really be in like the development, the build side of things. It'll be around like the optimization, the architecture, the thought process, and ultimately taste is what you said earlier. And that goes back to, you know, how tasteful is it?
Exactly.
And I think on the taste angle, like one of the more positive things, and that sounded a little negative, but the happy thing is like for taste, there's a big move for like right now we're on maybe like vibe coded apps, but eventually, let's say, you know, you use let's say you use our CRM and our help desk, but like how you use it is different than how I use it, and different than how the other guy uses it and the other girl uses it. It doesn't matter. But what do we got to do? We got to make one app that we put in the app store, and it's like works for everybody. It's got to work for an admin. It's got to work for a manager. It's got to work for a rep. And so all of these apps from every business software vendor, ours included, get very bloated. You know, you got to add all these features parity, and someone's like, "Oh, this feature's not in here. I need it in the mobile app too." And it's like, cool, fine. We'll put it in there. Now it's just a bigger and bigger app that's like, you know, menus and all sorts of stuff. When I open this thing, I just need an app for me. I need an app that I can look up, find the information about the contact. Do I need 300 fields that are in the CRM? No, I need like the 4 that are important to me. I don't even need their email or the phone number. I want their name, company, and like where they are probably. Maybe simple.
Exactly,
based on like my work and my role. So the extension of like kind of like the micro SaaS vibe code thing is also like super hyper personalized interfaces and experiences. So I think the idea of like the death of UIs and all that kind of stuff is a little overrated. It's kind of like, it's not the death of UIs, it's the death of like generic UIs, and it's the birth of like a hyper personalized UIs. So I want my mail to look like a certain way, just because like, let's say, I'll use mail as a good example. Maybe I think Zoho Mail has better features, but maybe I think another mail vendor looks better, just like has an aesthetically, or vice versa, whatever it is, right? Some companies focus on design and do extremely well at it. Some might focus on features and functionality. Some might focus on security and governance, and you know, each one will have their kind of like USPs, right? But if I like the security angle of one company, but I like the look and feel of another one, it's kind of like, hey, how can I take that look and feel and apply it to this thing, right? Now I can just make a skin, a lot of APIs, get the access to the information, and now I've got something that I'm so happy with you as a company. I'm not leaving you as a customer, but I'm just making it the way I wanted to make it. And so I think that democratization of personalization will become a very big deal, and that's going to be cool because now, you're just not stuck with what people give you. You can
it's almost like now like will be a paradigm shift in terms of a UI and design perspective.
So I'd say like even internally, for every employee in the company, you'd have like an individual app for your company that'd be like my Zoho app, and your Zoho app would be different for you, and you could customize it however you feel like it. And my other teammate would be a different app, and that's whatever makes you productive and what you like to do. That's kind of the goal. We shouldn't just like the age of like I think generic one size fits all for everybody for like the biggest market.
Right.
Those days are over. We're gonna have to find ways to make it easy for people to do, and that comes from like a lot of also like templates. You got to like make sure people aren't building from scratch, otherwise you kind of get the blank page problem. So encouraging people, giving them good ideas, guidelines and help along the way. And that'll be fun.
Dude, Tejas, thanks, man. It's been awesome, man. It's been great.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks everyone for joining us. That was actually a great discussion. I loved it, man.